There I was, standing at the back of St. Jude's Cathedral. The organist froze mid-chord. The collective gasp from 300 guests sucked all the air out of the room. Liam, the groom, dropped the rings. And my sister? She looked like she'd seen a ghost. If you want to understand how a wedding dissolves into utter chaos in the span of 30 seconds, you first have to understand the deeply flawed dynamic of the Gallagher household. In our family, there was Madeline, the golden child whose every sneeze was treated like a symphony, and then there was me, Juliet, the built-in understudy. Madeline was 4 years older, perpetually flawless, and engaged to Liam Kensington. Liam wasn't just handsome, he was Kensington wealthy. His family practically owned half the real estate in Boston, and my parents Arthur and Helen were absolutely desperate to secure the alliance. For a year, my parents bled themselves dry to fund a wedding that would impress Liam's mother, a terrifying matriarch named Beatrice. They took out a second mortgage, they drained their savings, and the crown jewel of this financial ruin was Madeline's wedding dress. It was a custom piece by a highly exclusive Italian designer, costing a staggering $18,000. I was there when she said yes to the dress. It was an ethereal cascade of ivory silk and chantilly lace, featuring a dramatic illusion back and a sweeping train that looked like spun glass. Woven into the inner bodice was a pale blue silk ribbon embroidered with MG, for Madeline Gallagher, her something blue. My mother wept. I simply calculated how many months of rent that dress could cover. Everything was proceeding according to my mother's meticulously color-coded binder until exactly 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in the kitchen eating a bowl of cereal when Madeline burst through the front door, hysterical. Her makeup was running down her face in thick, black rivers. She collapsed onto the kitchen island, hyperventilating. "It's gone!" she shrieked, clutching her chest. "They took it! The dress is gone!" My mother dropped a stack of plates. My father came running from the garage. It took 20 minutes of coaxing, a glass of water, and a paper bag for Madeline to spit out the story. She had picked up the dress from the final fitting. On her way home, she stopped at a high-end grocery store to pick up a bottle of wine. She was inside for barely 10 minutes. When she came out to the parking lot, the back window of her BMW SUV was shattered, and the garment bag holding the $18,000 dress was gone. The house erupted into a level of panic I had never witnessed. My mother was frantically calling the police, the designer, and the insurance company, only to discover my father had let the specific rider policy for the dress lapse to save money. The dress was uninsured. I walked out to the driveway to look at the car. The police hadn't arrived yet, and something immediately struck me as wrong. I am no detective, but I know how gravity works. The rear passenger window was completely smashed, but the majority of the shattered tempered glass was on the asphalt outside the car. Inside, the leather seats were relatively clean. If someone had smashed the window from the outside to grab a massive, heavy bridal garment bag, the glass should have been blown inward. It looked distinctly like the window had been broken from the inside out. I pointed this out to my father. He snapped at me. "Your sister is inside having a nervous breakdown, Juliet. Keep your ridiculous conspiracy theories to yourself." The next 48 hours were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. The designer could miraculously rush another dress, a different, slightly less extravagant, but still gorgeous $12,000 gown, but they needed the cash up front. My parents were tapped out. Their credit cards were maxed. That's when my mother cornered me in my bedroom. "Juliet, sweetheart," she began, her voice trembling with practiced fragility. "You know how much this means to your sister, to our family." I knew exactly what was coming. When my grandmother passed away, she left me a small trust of $15,000, meant to help me start my own bakery. Madeline had already blown her half on a gap year in Europe 5 years ago. "Mom, no. That's my business money," I said, backing away from her. "We will pay you back." After the wedding, when Arthur gets his bonus, she pleaded, tears brimming. "If Madeline doesn't have a dress, the Kensingtons will think we're white trash. The wedding will be ruined. Do you want to ruin your sister's life?" It wasn't a request. It was a hostage negotiation. After hours of screaming, guilt-tripping, and Madeline sobbing dramatically outside my door, I broke. I transferred $12,000 to my parents' account. I watched my bakery dreams evaporate so my sister could walk down the aisle. Madeline gave me a weak hug, whispering, "You're a lifesaver, Chloe." But as she pulled away, I caught her reflection in my vanity mirror. The tears were gone. Her eyes were completely dry, and a look of cold, calculating relief washed over her face. She didn't look devastated about losing her dream dress. She looked like a woman who had just gotten away with murder. Over the next 2 weeks, I simmered in quiet, bitter resentment. The replacement dress arrived, and the wedding machine marched on. But the image of the glass on the driveway and the dry-eyed reflection in my mirror haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been scammed by my own flesh and blood. Exactly 8 days before the wedding, I was sent on a fool's errand to a neighboring upscale town, Oak Ridge, to pick up custom silk napkins my mother had ordered. Oak Ridge was an hour away, known for its sprawling estates and obscenely wealthy residents. After grabbing the napkins, I decided to grab a coffee. Next to the cafe was an incredibly chic consignment boutique called L'Elegance. Intrigued by the vintage Chanel in the window, I wandered in. The shop smelled of lavender and expensive leather. Racks of designer clothes were meticulously organized by color. I was mindlessly flipping through a rack of evening gowns when I saw it. The lace. The specific, unmistakable Chantilly lace. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pulled the heavy hanger from the rack. It was an ivory Anya Rossi couture gown, the exact illusion back, the sweeping train. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around to see the shop owner, a tall, impeccably dressed woman in her 50s, smiling at me. It's stunning. I managed to choke out. Is it new? Never worn, the owner said, stepping closer to admire the craftsmanship. A spectacular piece. It just came in about a week and a half ago. Frankly, it's the most exquisite gown I've ever had in the shop. A week and a half ago, the exact timeline of the theft. Can I look at the inside? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Of course, dear. I unzipped the delicate back and pulled the bodice open. There, sewn meticulously into the inner seam, was a pale blue silk ribbon. Embroidered in curling silver thread were the letters M.G. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I wasn't just looking at a similar dress. I was looking at the dress. Madeline's dress. The one that was supposedly stolen from her car. The woman who sold this to you, I started, trying to keep my voice casual, though I felt like I was suffocating. Do you remember her? The owner raised an eyebrow, sensing my intensity. I do, actually. It was an unusual transaction. She wanted cash. We usually do consignment, split the sale, but she was adamant. Said her wedding was called off, the memories were too painful, and she just needed it gone immediately. She took a fraction of what it's worth. I paid her $6,000 cash from the safe. Did she have blonde hair? About 5'7", big green eyes, maybe driving a white BMW? I asked rapidly. The owner's eyes widened. Yes, exactly her. She signed the intake form as Sarah Smith, but she didn't show ID since it was a direct cash buyout. Do you know her? Yes, I said, a dark, freezing anger crystallizing in my chest. I do. I thanked the woman, stumbled out of the store, and sat in my car for nearly an hour. Madeline faked the theft. She smashed her own car window from the inside, hid the dress, drove to Oak Ridge, and sold her $18,000 custom gown for $6,000 in untraceable cash. Then, she came home, played the victim, and let my parents drain my inheritance to buy her a second dress. But why? Madeline was marrying a multimillionaire. Why would she risk everything, ruin my future, and commit insurance and police fraud for $6,000 in fast cash? I needed proof. That night, during a chaotic family dinner where Liam and his parents were visiting to discuss the rehearsal menu, I slipped upstairs. Madeline had left her iPad charging on her bed. She was famously terrible with passwords. It was always Liam's birthday. I unlocked the screen and went straight to her iMessages. At first, it was just wedding planner updates and texts to her bridesmaids. Then, I checked her hidden folders and recently deleted messages. Nothing. I was about to give up when I opened her Instagram app and checked her direct messages. There it was, a thread with a user named @Rex99, a guy named Trent. I scrolled up, my stomach churning with every line I read. Trent wasn't an old friend. He was a bartender from a club downtown. And based on the messages, Madeline had been sleeping with him for the past 6 months. But the affair wasn't the worst part. Trent. Time's up, Maddie. 6K by Friday, or Liam gets the video from the hotel in Vegas. His mommy would love to see how her future daughter-in-law parties. Madeline, I told you I'm getting it. You can't ruin this for me, Trent. If Liam calls off the wedding, I have nothing. I'll have the cash tomorrow. Trent, better be tomorrow. Cash only. Leave it in the glove box of my Honda. Madeline, it's done. I dropped it off. Delete the video, you psycho. Trent, pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Kensington. I took out my phone and took photos of every single message, making sure the timestamps and his handle were crystal clear. Madeline was being blackmailed by her side piece, and instead of facing the music, she sold her wedding dress, faked a crime, and robbed her own little sister to cover her tracks. She let me hand over my bakery money so she could hide her infidelity and secure her billionaire groom. I walked out of her room, my blood humming with a toxic mix of betrayal and pure, unadulterated vengeance. I could have walked downstairs right then and blown up the dinner party. I could have shoved the phone in Liam's face and watched Madeline's world burn. But as I looked down the stairs at my sister, laughing flawlessly while sipping champagne with her future mother-in-law, wearing a diamond the size of a grape, I realized an explosive dinner argument wasn't enough. She had taken my money, my future, and played me for a fool. I didn't want to just stop the wedding. I wanted to destroy her. The next morning, I drove back to L'Elegance in Oak Ridge. I walked up to the counter and maxed out my only 2 credit cards. I bought the dress back. It was a size 4. I was a size 6, but I am an excellent seamstress. Over the next 5 days, while the house was consumed with floral arrangements and seating charts, I locked myself in my apartment. I carefully let out the side seams of the Anya Rossi gown. I adjusted the illusion back. I altered the hem. I was Madeline's maid of honor. My designated dress was a hideous, shapeless mauve chiffon monstrosity she had chosen specifically to make sure I faded into the background. But I had no intention of fading. I was going to be the center of attention. The final 3 days leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I lived in a state of hypervigilance, moving through my parents' house like a ghost, all while a quiet, burning justice simmered beneath my skin. Madeline was in her element, holding court over her bridesmaids, Harper and Jessica, barking orders and complaining about the cheap lace on her $12,000 replacement dress. It's just not the Anya Rossi, she sighed dramatically during a fitting in the living room, dabbing at a dry eye while our mother hovered with a glass of Pinot Grigio. But I'll make the sacrifice. I have to be strong. I almost laughed out loud. The sheer audacity of her victimhood was staggering. My mother, Helen, patted her shoulder sympathetically, casting a harsh glare in my direction as I folded programs. Your sister is incredibly brave, Juliet. Try to look a little more supportive. I just smiled a thin, tight smile. Oh, I'm going to support her exactly the way she deserves, Mom. The rehearsal dinner on Friday night was held at the Kensington family's private country club. It was an intimidating display of generational wealth. Liam's mother, Beatrice, sat at the head of the table like a feudal lord, inspecting everything from the floral centerpieces to the polish on the silverware. Beatrice was a terrifying woman, the kind of matriarch who viewed people as either assets or liabilities. She clearly viewed my parents as the latter, barely tolerating their eager-to-please fawning. Liam, to his credit, seemed blissfully unaware of the toxic undercurrents. He was a genuinely decent guy, looking at Madeline with absolute adoration. It made my stomach turn. He was marrying an illusion, a carefully constructed facade designed to secure his family's empire. During the dinner, Madeline gave a tearful toast. She thanked Liam for his love, thanked her future in-laws for welcoming her, and then, with theatrical flair, turned to me. And to my little sister Juliet, she announced, her voice echoing through the opulent dining room. When tragedy struck and my dream dress was stolen by some heartless criminal, Juliet stepped up. She sacrificed her own savings so I could walk down the aisle feeling beautiful. I will never forget your generosity, Chloe. The guests applauded politely. Liam raised his glass to me, a genuine smile on his face. Madeline looked at me, her green eyes cold and triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought she had neatly buried her betrayal under a mountain of fake gratitude, securing her place at the top of the social hierarchy while I footed the bill. She was the untouchable queen, and I was just the peasant who had been taxed to fund her reign. I raised my water glass in return, holding her gaze. Enjoy your crown tonight, Maddie, I thought, because tomorrow I'm burning the castle down. Saturday arrived with a torrential downpour, an ominous start to what was supposed to be the society wedding of the year. The bridal party was scheduled to get ready in the penthouse suite of a luxury downtown hotel. I arrived early, carrying a massive, opaque black garment bag. "What is that?" Harper, the lead bridesmaid, asked, eyeing the bulky bag as she sipped a mimosa. "Backup supplies," I lied smoothly. "Emergency steamer, extra styling tools. You know how mom gets if there's a wrinkle." Harper dismissed me, returning to her phone. I spent the next 4 hours playing the dutiful, invisible maid of honor. I fetched coffee, held hairspray, and steamed the wrinkles out of Madeline's replacement gown. At 1 p.m., an hour before the ceremony, the chaos peaked. Madeline was having a meltdown over her eyelashes, and my mother was yelling at the photographer. Under the cover of the hysteria, I grabbed my black garment bag, slipped out the back door of the suite, and took the service elevator down to the lobby. I drove straight to St. Jude's Cathedral. The massive stone church was already buzzing with florists and ushers. I found an empty Sunday school classroom in the basement, locked the door, and unzipped the bag. I stripped out of my jeans and carefully stepped into the $18,000 Anya Rossi couture gown. It fit perfectly. The weeks of meticulous alterations had paid off. The heavy ivory silk clung to my waist, the chantilly lace hugged my arms, and the spectacular illusion back, the one Madeline had cried over, the one I had drained my bakery fund for, was flawless. I pinned my hair up in a sleek twist and applied a bold, blood-red lipstick. I didn't look like a maid of honor. I looked like an avenging angel. I checked my watch. 1:50 p.m. The guests would be seated. The bridal party would be lining up in the vestibule. I took a deep breath, grabbed the manila folder I had stashed in my purse, and began the long walk up the basement stairs. The vestibule of St. Jude's was chaotic when I pushed through the heavy oak doors. The bridesmaids were lined up in their hideous mauve dresses. My father was pacing nervously. And there, standing at the back of the line, was Madeline, looking beautiful in her $12,000 replacement gown. My mother spotted me first. Her eyes darted from my face down to the sweeping hem of the dress, and her jaw physically dropped. "Juliet?" she gasped, her voice a strangled squeak. What are you wearing? Where is your bridesmaid dress?" Madeline spun around. For a split second, she looked confused. Then, her eyes locked onto the intricate lace pattern of the bodice. She recognized the illusion back. She recognized the way the silk folded. All the color instantly drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax figure. "No," Madeline whispered, taking a step back, her hands trembling. "No, that's impossible. It was stolen." "Was it, Maddie?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm, carrying over the sudden dead silence of the vestibule. Before she could answer, the massive double doors to the sanctuary swung open. The heavy, majestic chords of the organ filled the air, signaling the start of the procession. The wedding coordinator, oblivious to the nuclear bomb that had just detonated in the entryway, furiously waved at us to start walking. "Go," the coordinator hissed. Madeline stood frozen, paralyzed by the ghost of her own deceit wearing her stolen gown. I didn't wait for her. I stepped around my sister, bypassed the bridesmaids, and walked directly into the cathedral. There I was, standing at the back of St. Jude's Cathedral. The organist froze mid-chord. The collective gasp from 300 guests sucked all the air out of the room. Liam, the groom, dropped the rings. And my sister? She looked like she'd seen a ghost, because she had. I walked slowly down the long, velvet-lined aisle. The murmurs erupted into a deafening wave of whispers. I saw Beatrice Kensington half stand from her front row pew, her eyes blazing with aristocratic fury. I kept my eyes locked on Liam. He looked utterly bewildered, his gaze darting from me to the massive doors behind me, searching for his bride. When I reached the altar, I stopped. Father Thomas gripped his Bible like it was a shield. "Juliet?" Liam asked, his voice cracking. "What is going on? Why are you wearing a wedding dress?" Footsteps echoed frantically behind me. Madeline sprinted down the aisle, her veil askew, my mother trailing behind her in a panic. "Take it off!" Madeline shrieked, abandoning all decorum as she reached the altar, lunging toward me. "Take it off her right now! She stole it! She's trying to ruin my wedding!" "I didn't steal it," I said loudly, turning to face the congregation. "I bought it. at Lelegance consignment shop in Oak Ridge for $18,000, because that's where Madeline sold it a week and a half ago. Chaos erupted. Beatrice Kensington marched up to the altar, her face a mask of terrifying authority. "What is the meaning of this circus?" she demanded, glaring at my mother. "Helen, control your children!" "She's lying," Madeline sobbed, clinging to Liam's arm. "Liam, she's insane. She's always been jealous of me. My car was broken into. You know that." "I know the window was smashed from the inside," I corrected her, turning to Liam. "And I know why she needed $6,000 in untraceable cash in 24 hours. I opened the manila folder I had carried down the aisle. I pulled out a stack of high-gloss 8x10 photographs. They were the screenshots of her Instagram messages with Trent. I handed the first one directly to Liam. Liam looked down at the paper, his brow furrowed in confusion, which quickly morphed into horror as he read the words. "Time's up, Maddie. 6K by Friday, or Liam gets the video from the hotel in Vegas." "Who is Trent?" Liam asked, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet register. He looked at Madeline, pulling his arm away from her grasp. "Maddie, who is Trent?" Madeline let out a choked, desperate sound. "It's a fake. She faked those messages." I handed the rest of the stack to Beatrice. The formidable matriarch adjusted her reading glasses, her eyes scanning the blackmail demands, the confirmation of the drop-off, the sordid details of a 6-month affair. "A bartender," Beatrice read aloud, her tone dripping with absolute disgust. She looked up, her gaze pinning my parents to the floor. "You brought a deceitful, unfaithful grifter into my family?" "Beatrice, please, there must be a misunderstanding," my father pleaded, stepping forward, his face red with humiliation. "There is no misunderstanding, Arthur," I said firmly, looking directly at my parents. "She slept with a bartender. He blackmailed her with a video. To pay him off, she sold her $18,000 dress, faked a robbery, and then let you bleed my $15,000 bakery fund dry so she could buy a replacement and keep her billionaire groom, all while playing the tragic victim." "Juliet, how could you do this today?" my mother wailed, tears streaming down her face. "You're destroying our family." "No, Mom," I replied, the years of playing second fiddle finally snapping. "Madeline destroyed it. I just provided the evidence. I wanted my money back, but since she doesn't have it, I figured wearing the truth was the next best thing." Liam didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply handed the screenshot back to Madeline. It fluttered to the marble floor. "The wedding is off," Liam said, his voice completely hollow. He turned to Father Thomas. "I'm sorry for wasting your time, Father." "Liam, wait! Liam, please!" Madeline screamed, dropping to her knees on the altar, sobbing uncontrollably. The golden child was finally completely broken, her perfect facade shattered into a million unfixable pieces. Liam walked down the aisle, never looking back. Beatrice followed him, but not before stopping next to me. She looked at the intricate lace of the Anya Rossi gown, then looked me directly in the eye. "It's a spectacular dress," Beatrice said coldly, "and you have far more spine than the rest of your pathetic family combined." With that, she swept out of the church. The fallout was catastrophic. The Kensington family sent my parents a bill for their half of the wedding expenses. My father had to liquidate his retirement fund to pay them off to avoid a massive lawsuit. Madeline moved back into her childhood bedroom, disgraced, dumped, and blacklisted from every country club and high society circle in Boston. Trent, the bartender, he was investigated by the police after Beatrice Kensington made a few quiet phone calls to the district attorney regarding extortion. As for me, I moved out the very next day. I sold the Anya Rossi dress again, this time to an overseas buyer who paid top dollar for the vintage couture. I used the money, along with what was left of my pride, to move across the country. I opened a small, successful bakery in Seattle. I haven't spoken to my mother, my father, or my sister in over 3 years. Sometimes, burning down the castle is the only way to build a life of your own. Wow, talk about a wedding day disaster. Juliet really delivered the ultimate karma, didn't she? Have you ever dealt with a toxic family member who got exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you loved this crazy story of revenge and betrayal, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more wild, real-life drama stories every single week.